maybe we'll be surprised. She might give stuff like this and stuff. So, sorry, I got an email. I just told Eston. I can do whatever. So, do you need me to drive? What do you need me to do? Okay. Mine's disgusting too, but I can take her. I don't give a shit. Okay, so what do I? Okay, so what time do you want me to pick her up? So we're meeting. What time is dinner? It is at 6. Okay, I thought it was at 6:30. Okay, so you want me to pick her up at like 6:10 or something? Me too. And dinner's at the Cash? Yeah. Okay. 6:10. No. So it sounds like you're having 6:20. Okay, I'll tell her I'll pick her up at 6:20. Maybe she'll meet me out front.
I've never been in there.
You know what? I was late today. I didn't have to introduce her because everyone came from this, so it was easy. Yeah. Okay.
That would be great.
Mike said, you don't get dessert, you get dessert to go.
From what I saw last year.
Yeah, I'll get dessert to go. I'll tell Jeannie why I'm doing it though.
Oh, wow.
So I basically no, because somebody has to stay home with the dogs. I need a break. Yeah, I'm looking forward. Because he was on Jeff's with the new, I feel like it is of all the restaurants. What's the one we're going to with Darren next week?
We'll have to wait extra.
Is that where we're going? Okay, I couldn't remember. I just signed up where you signed up. I was like, where's Jeannie? I'm running late. Let's roll.
Okay. Thank you for attending the kind of vision seminar for our candidate for department head. So it's my pleasure to introduce Carrie Maisello, who comes to us from Rice University, where she is the W. Maurice Ewing Professor of Earth, Environmental, and Planetary Sciences at Rice, located in Houston, Texas. She also has a joint faculty appointment in the Department of Biosciences and Department of Chemistry, and is a Baker Institute for Public Policy faculty scholar. So she is a biogeochemist and a geobiologist working on understanding and developing tools for carbon, nitrogen, and water fluxes and how that works through the Earth's systems, and really trying to look at the relevance of those for processes such as climate, water, and agriculture. She's published more than 80 peer-reviewed studies and received over $10 million in research from NSF, DOE, USDA, DOD, and other private foundations and businesses. Prior to her time at Rice, she received a BA in mathematics and physics from Earlham College in 1991, a master's in environmental science and engineering from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and second MS in physical chemistry from the University of California, Irvine, and then a PhD in earth system science from UCI. Also did a postdoc at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and then a postdoc at UC Santa Barbara, California Institute of Technology. She's also a fellow of the Geological Society of America. And it's a pleasure to have you here on campus and in Colorado. I hope you're enjoying this great stretch of weather we're having. And just help me in welcoming Carrie.
Thank you so much, and thank you for welcoming me into your community and giving me an opportunity to visit with the faculty, staff, and students here. I've really enjoyed my time so far, meeting with everybody and getting to know your community. So thank you for that opportunity. Can everybody hear me? Am I loud enough in the back? I have a great outside voice, so let me know if I... Okay, so yes, I'm at Rice University in Houston. I'm at a small private liberal arts college, which does not have an ag focus. And everybody I've met with so far has asked me what's interesting to me about this position. And I have to say, I really like where I am. I really like my job, but I am the only person in my program, in my department, perhaps even in my school, who has an interest in agriculture. And I have had the challenge and blessing of building from scratch relationships with growers, relationships with farmers, relationships with landowners, so that I have the opportunity to do scholarship in my community in a way that is engaged with the needs of my community. I also, I'm from the school that I'm at is highly selective. So the undergrad population is, I can't remember if it's 9 or 11% is the undergrad acceptance rate. And I love working with those students. I also love working with community college students. And so I've been privileged to have the opportunity to use NSF RU funding to build a pipeline from the local Houston community colleges into my school. But again, this is not a normal part of my institution's background. An interest in community colleges, an interest in working with students who, I was telling the grad students, I work with a undergrad program at my university that's designed to support students who are at risk. And at Rice, students are at risk if they enter with less than 3 AP courses on their transcript, because the average incoming student has 15. Not 15 credits, but 15 semesters of AP. And so creating a bridge for community college students in that environment is incredibly satisfying. But I am not part of a community of people who, the community is growing, but I'm not part of a large community of people who's interested in serving, in the mission of higher education as serving the greater community, or interested in serving in the agriculture space. So, y'all, okay, full disclosure, I'm terrible at graphics. So the graphic you're looking at is like high skill for me right now. But I made this to sort of give you a sense of what my experience is, what I bring as a scholar and as a administrator in my toolkit of skills. So I'm experienced in excellence in research and graduate education. The grad students ask me how many grad students I've had, and I actually don't know that number. It's somewhere north of 15. But I'm also experienced in undergrad education, so I've had about 50 undergrads come through my laboratory. My undergrad population in my laboratory is majority underrepresented, and my undergrad population is about twice as underrepresented as the university-wide population. So I'm also very experienced in what does it mean to recruit and sustain underrepresented students in the sciences. I'm very proud that 80%, for example, of the African-American women who come through my research group have gone on to grad school. So I have a lot of experience in undergrad education, specifically in DEI, bringing underrepresented students into the science pipeline and sustaining them there. I have experience with philanthropy. So I've worked with foundations in a couple of different contexts. So I've worked with open call foundations where there is a request for proposals, where a foundation says, you know, we have the Keck Foundation, for example, issues an annual call and you can write a grant to them. I've also experienced in working with foundations that do not have annual calls. So foundations that for which you must build social relationships to begin to get the emails expressing interest in hearing from you to receive money. So I have that skill, and actually it feels like this is a great place to be in that environment because lots of rich people want to come to Colorado. So if you need to build access to the kind of social capital that gets you into those conversations, it really seems like this is a way better state to be doing that in than Texas. I run an undergrad major. I run the environmental science major, which is an interdisciplinary major, and I have some more information about that here. and I'm experienced with alumni and stakeholder development. So I not only rewrote and recreated an undergrad major within the last 10 years, but I've also knit alumni very tightly into that nature. And I will talk more about that process of how do you knit alumni into your undergrad and grad programs and what the benefits of that are. And the spoiler is the benefits are usually not financial, but they are very significant otherwise. One thing I'm really excited about is the opportunity to work somewhere that has an extension program. So the extension program that I'm part of right now is me going to farmers markets and meeting people and saying, hey, can I bring my students to do experiments on your land? So I've personally built relationships with landowners, with farmers, so that I can get my students into their fields to do projects. And what a privilege it would be to have the opportunity to be somewhere where I don't have to start from scratch, building relationships that get students into the field. I feel very strongly about this pipeline. This is a continuum. It's not like you invest in undergrad education at the instead of investing in excellence in research or instead of investing in extension. I think you invest and plan in a way that builds, you use your undergrads through internships in outside campus, which builds the undergrad education and provides opportunities to strengthen your scholarship, because now you have a connection to somebody who's really working in the world and has real problems and can help you think about what kinds of scholarship needs to be done. So I feel very strongly about this clear pipeline. And I would prefer it if people ask me questions while I'm talking. I'm also happy to take questions at the end, but if you want to ask me to talk more about something while we're on a slide, that's also okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about growing undergrad enrollment, because that's something I have experience in, and it's also something that I've been asked about repeatedly through this process. So I'm going to talk about it from my experience where I am. I can't talk about it from your experience because I'm not in your shoes, but so what I can do is give you a window on how I have historically solved problems, and then that I think you can use to assess if those are skills that you want. So if you want more undergrads, it doesn't help to tell them that they should be interested in what you do. You need to know what they care about. And to find out what undergrads care about, you have to engage with them and ask them. And so one of the first things, I'll show you, let's see, where do I have that figure? The program that I took over, the environmental science major I took over, was graduating an average of 1.2 students a year when I became director of the program. And one of the first things we did was to survey the freshmen to see if this was a problem with student interest or if this was a problem with the design of the program. So we got a question onto the annual freshman survey asking them what aspects, if they were interested in anything having to do with environment, climate, society, food. And 52% of the freshman incoming class said that they were interested in learning more about this somewhere in their curriculum. And so there we were with 52% of the incoming freshmen versus 1.2 majors graduating a year. And that gave us really the ammunition we needed to start talking about curricular overhaul. So the next thing we did was to look at the curriculum. So understanding whether the curriculum is a good match to your students' interests, their skills, and their needs. So one of the first things we found was that there were too many stakeholders, well, not too many stakeholders, but there were stakeholders in the process when the program had been invented 15 years ago who had inserted requirements into the program that were roadblocks for the students. And so we were able to reduce the number of requirements for the program without compromising the education at all. Through that, we took a program that had more requirements than any other major at the university and made it into a major we had this great idea, which turned out to be wrong. But we had this great idea that we could take this program and make it compatible with the host department program. So we were going to take this environmental science major and make it really easy for people to double in this major and biosciences, and then also to double in that major and earth sciences, because we figured we'd be getting students from that pool. So we created a curriculum to make double major easy, and then we worked on advertising throughout the university system. I'll finish the story about the failure, the bad idea with the doubling. It turned out that 10 years after getting this program going, we went back and surveyed where we were seeing double majors. Like, were we seeing double majors where we thought we were going to see them? And the answer was no. We were not seeing students double majoring in environmental science and the core science disciplines, which is where we faculty had imagined the connections would be. We discovered instead that students were making completely different connections that were much more appropriate for their interests. So we were seeing doubles in social policy analysis. Our largest double is anthropology. So we were seeing doubles in places where, psychology. We were seeing doubles in places where students wanted to think about people and environment at the same time. And so we actually thought we had created these easy pathways, but once we built a program that was accessible at some level to students, they were picking incredibly hard double majors. There's one course overlap between anthropology and environmental science. But those were the students who I realized later were the ones who I put out in the field working with farmers who wanted to talk to farmers about what their needs were. They were using the interview skills and the skills of understanding people that they were getting from their anthropology program to design really great experiments. So I personally learned from this that you need to be quite agnostic in your assumptions about what people's needs are. So just because you think you have a nice solution, you could really be wrong. You have to feed back with your student and your faculty stakeholders. So advertising. So how do you get your program to new demographics? And how do you expose, are there ways to expose freshmen to a program already that exists? So there's always a trade-off between asking your community for more labor in terms of advertising and outreach and the labor they're already doing in the laboratory, in the classroom, service that they're already doing. So you have to think carefully when you ask grad students, faculty, and undergrads to do more work for you. But I want to let you guys know that your grad students have great ideas. So I just spent an hour with your grad students asking them about this, and they have some really great ideas. And not only that, they have some problems that you could solve as carrots for asking them to help you with outreach. So when you ask, of course, students are like everybody else. When you ask them to do more work, it takes away from something else they're doing. But you may find that there are carrots that you can offer your students to get them to help you. And of course, whenever you want to reach somebody who's 18, 19, 20, the people you want reaching out are not the people who are 55. The people you want reaching out are in their mid-20s because everyone hears things better from near-peer mentors. So your 18-year-olds are going to hear best from your senior undergrads, and your junior and sophomore undergrads are going to really want to hear from your grad students. And so you want to find ways to engage the people you have in this recruiting process so that they can be your allies here. And then I put a caution symbol here. This is, again, my excellence with graphics. But you want to reevaluate your curriculum last. And the reason I say that last is because it's a significant investment in faculty time to spin up new courses. And so you may discover when you find out what student interest is that the things that students are interested in are not a good match, not only for the majors that exist, they may not even be a good match for the institutional department structures that you have. And addressing that mismatch is a long-term problem. You can't just come in and say, well, our students want this type of major and our institution is structured this way. That's a non-starter. So you want to start by looking at what you have already and seeing if you can put what you have already together in a way that's more appealing to student interests. And then over the long term, you build with colleagues and external stakeholders toward undergrad programs that are in more coherence. You get so that you can you keep that coherence between student interests and courses, faculty capabilities. So the other thing you want to be aware of is hidden stakeholders. So my hidden stakeholders right now for the environmental science major at Rice University are parents who want their children to be engineers, doctors, or lawyers. And so those are the third person in the room. Whenever a student comes into the room and tells me they really want to major in environmental science, there's a third person in the room. That person is, and that person is their parent or their grandparent, and that person may be a Generation Zero immigrant who has laid it all on the line to get this kid to a Tier 1 high-performing school. And the possibility of that kid majoring in environmental science is a gut punch to the parent. So figuring out ways to address that. In some cases, this particular problem is irreconcilable. You may never get that kid to not be a pre-med. But in some cases, you can help get folks to a better resolution in that situation. So I spend a lot of time dispelling myths about job opportunities, telling people that you can get jobs as an environmental scientist. It turns out right now, actually, just over the last 10 years, students went from, I would ask students what they're going to do after graduation, and they tell me things like, I'm gonna go cut trails. I'm gonna go be a trail cutter on the Appalachian Trail. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds wonderful. But now they say, well, you know, I got recruited by a consulting company to do ESG, and they were really excited about me having had a background in soil carbon sequestration from your class that helped me learn how to assess the quality of carbon credits. And so my job is going to be to vet private businesses' proposals to buy carbon credits, and I'm going to start at $90,000 a year. And so telling parents, so sometimes parents just need to know that there are jobs that pay extremely well with a bachelor's at this point for some of these majors. And that can be, you can accomplish that just through better web design, showcasing your alumni on the web. And then you can also design majors or design minors. Minors are a great way to deal with hidden stakeholders in the undergrad education process. If you have, I think y'all have an organic agriculture minor, is that right? Across departments. I saw a thumbs up there. I saw that and I thought, oh, that's a hidden stakeholder. That's targeting hidden stakeholder parents who don't want their kids to, they're not ready, they're not emotionally ready for their kids to go into agriculture, but they can do a minor in the field, and that begins to bring them into the conversation. So this is the major that I run. This is the total enrollment, number of students versus time. And so the timeline here, this is when I took over directing the program. This is when I worked with the faculty committee to using only existing courses, asking no faculty to teach anything different. We reconstructed the major here. And then this is the period where we've been adding new material to the major. So we've changed it over time. And I do that with a faculty committee in a highly fed back process. So it's not my job to decide what needs to come and go. I provide the committee information, and then they make decisions about what they can tolerate in terms of changing their workload and the curriculum through that. So the kinds of things that I did, I added a junior capstone course. I actually called it a senior capstone course, but the students, after a year, the students started behind the scenes telling each other that it was a course that you should take your junior year, not your senior year. And that's because I did alumni interviews. So I began a culture where there's an expectation that about 2 years out of your degree, you will come back. And we did this primarily over Zoom during the pandemic, but we also have, now we're bringing people back in person. You will come back to the junior capstone course. You're about 2 years out and talk about the experience of finishing undergrad. Like, what did you do? How did you get from where you are to this job that you're at that you never thought you'd be at, but actually I'm making money and I get to sleep at night and I'm having a good life, or I've gotten to grad school and I didn't think I was going to go to grad school in this different type of specialization, but actually I was prepared by these courses to go into this. And so I have a culture where we do these 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year exit interviews with our alumni. And this is very powerful in terms, we use this information in 2 ways. It's very powerful educationally because I can say until I'm blue in the face to students, really you need to have some coding background, or you really need to learn GIS. You need to develop these quantitative skills because someday in the future, when you get out into the workforce, I can't tell you when, somebody is going to tell you that they can't promote you because you don't have these skills. Or if you have these skills, you're going to be the only person who can do this job. But having alumni who say that in front of the undergrads, hey, thank goodness I took that extra GIS class. It's not in the requirements, but that really made a difference for me in the job market. It's very helpful to have alumni say that to students instead of having me say it. The other thing I do with this is I teach communication skills to the undergrads. So these are formal, structured interviews that the undergrads have to do with their near peers. So we talk about how do you do a professional interview? What does it mean to behave as a professional in an interview setting? How do you run a group interview? And I always look at them and I tell them, if it gets quiet, I'm not bailing you out. So you need to find somebody among you who is going to be in charge of making sure that the questions get asked, because this is not my show, this is your show. So this is extremely effective as a teaching tool, but it's also extremely effective as a curriculum revisions tool, because alumni tell us, hey, that course, that was really important. I took that course as an option, and it gave me a skill that I absolutely had to have. Or they'll say, don't bring that person back into the classroom again. And that they couldn't tell me that when they were enrolled, but they can tell me that now that they're out of campus. And so me having that opportunity to feed that information back to the curriculum committee allows for some flexibility in restructuring of the curriculum. All right, and I know this sounds really obvious, but don't ask people to teach things they don't like, they don't know, or they're not interested in teaching, because this creates student dissatisfaction, and it also makes faculty cranky. So you want to avoid asking people to do things that they can't do. And getting that right with building a curriculum is a long-term conversation. Okay, so on-campus outreach. So undergrads are a font of enthusiasm and energy in ways that it's really hard to remember when you're over 40. Like, the amount of energy that a 19-year-old has is great. And so you want to capture that and use them as near-peer mentors to recruit in the dorms, in the campus communities. I don't know how the undergrad social structure is built at CSU, but perhaps you do. Certainly they do. And ask them, say, where should we be advertising and can you help us? So find your undergrads and put them to work. They're great assets. Your grad students also have ideas about this as well. So, and some interest in helping you with this process. You can address your parent stakeholders at these events. And then community colleges are super important for off-campus. And I want to talk a little bit about this report from the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation that came out in 2019. It's just called Persistence, and it's about how community college transfer students succeed or don't when they move to four-year schools. And it's a really interesting and useful report if you think about community college students and how to engage them at universities. So the thing to take away, I just absolutely clipped this from their report. The thing to take away from this, the blue lines are students who entered into a four-year school directly from high school. Green are students who transferred from a four-year to a four-year. And orange are students who transferred from a community college to a four-year. And then each different category here is the degree of competitiveness of the school that they transfer to. And at every single level, community colleges outperform students who come in as entrants from high school. They also outperform students who come in as transfers from four-year schools. So there's nothing to lose from engaging, even at these very highly competitive schools like the one I'm at. You're not going to lose anything in engaging with these students. These are not weak students. These are students who are ready to work hard. So I'm a big advocate for engaging these students. I also personally feel that this is how we build democracy, is through bringing community college students in, through equalizing the higher education process. And then I apologize if I'm telling you things that you already know about, but CSU is a model nationally for how to engage community college students. So I don't know if y'all are involved in this.
You said that you want to be interrupted, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
No, actually, that was interesting to me because I'm just offering a 1 credit class for high school teacher. And actually, it wasn't advertised to the Front Range, but 3 of the teachers that came were from Front Range, and they said that they would love a communication with the College of Ag, because I think there is only a connection with the Warner College, that there isn't a path to Ag, and they were really interested in that.
Yeah, I think if it's not the case that you already have someone who is best friends with the Bridges to Baccalaureate.
I'm in that program.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is through the microbiology department, so it's on the other side of campus.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like you want to not just be like a name on the list with these programs. You want to have people seated in them, and you want to know who at Front Range Community College. You want to be besties with somebody at Front Range Community College who's in front of a lot of new students, and have them feed them examples they can use in their classroom, so that they are doing your job of feed them a 1 unit of feed them a day of lectures on soils or crops or plant genomics, so that they see this enthusiasm in this population of students to bring to you. And that's not just like a phone call. I know building these relationships is hard. I mean, one of the most challenging relationships that I have been working on is with Texas Southern University, which is located 2.5 miles from Rice University. Do y'all know the history of Texas Southern? So Texas Southern was founded because the University of Texas refused to desegregate. And the Supreme Court said, okay, well, if you're not going to desegregate UT, you need to create an entirely separate educational system so that you have 2 parallel schools, and it needs to be as good as UT. And so Texas Southern was a old high school building that was created to be the parallel for UT for Black students. And it's 2.5 miles from Rice University and has historically no formal connection, although the first Black students who integrated Rice University were also TSU students. And so, understandably, building a relationship with TSU is fraught with this very deep history of bad behavior. on the part of peer institutions and to get into TSU to recruit. The thing I finally had to do was I discovered that one of our assistant professors goes to church with the chair of the physics department, and he was not returning my emails. So I set her to corner him after church and tell him to return my emails. So now I have a pipeline for recruiting in physics at TSU. It's not a perfect pipeline for recruiting to geosciences, but going in and not being a jerk is a really great way to get started at building these kinds of pipelines. Okay, so yes, so building relationships is sometimes hard, but you gotta do it. And sometimes you have to be creative in how you do it. All right. I believe strongly in this connection between research, extension, and undergrad education, that it should be a continuum. And I was really happy to hear this morning that y'all have a program to put undergrads in internships through extension. I think that's really great. I think that strengthening that kind of feedback is going to be very important for making sure that the kinds of education that you're offering are deeply connected to the needs of the community, and for undergrads want to be needed, and they want to be doing something that means something to them. And sometimes they have to see it right in front of you. This thing you're doing in the classroom, this is immediately how it's relevant. And that so these kinds of opportunities are very important. I talked a few minutes ago about using your young alumni as near-peer mentors, bringing them back to talk about their educational trajectories, and then using that to iterate with your curriculum development. And this kind of stakeholder feedback is crucial to making sure that your community is aware of everybody else's needs and that you're working as a community to meet everybody's needs. Often, the problem is not that you have some intransigent person who doesn't like X. It's just that people are not aware of each other's needs and don't have a sense of how to work together as a community to achieve those needs. And you do this through this kind of stakeholder feedback. So your older alumni are connectors for you. Your older alumni can talk to the students about the larger trajectory of jobs. And sometimes the older alumni conversations are also useful for helping students think about the direction of their careers and research. But these older alumni are especially helpful in talking about business collaborations, and then in talking about how to work with a company to raise funds, to build collaborations, and to get at corporate donations. So you want to keep in touch with your older alumni as well, through social events or through updates over email, newsletters, happy hours. You want to keep them connected so that you can tap them for this kind of help. Very few universities have the golden alumnus that we all dream of, who's ready to give $100 million to create 5 endowed chairs. So it's unlikely. It's unlikely that an investment in alumni is going to yield you a lot of money. You can use alumni to, alumni may be able to help you financially with smaller things like student internships, getting students experiential learning, and that can be a real useful, helpful fundraising avenue. But your alumni are primarily not a money-making engine. They're a resource for other types of problem solving. Okay, y'all asked me to talk about stakeholders, and I've actually just done a huge amount talking about stakeholders already. I've talked about your community as a stakeholder, I've talked about your students as stakeholders, and I've talked about your alumni as stakeholders. But there are other stakeholders that you want to engage with as well. So you have a lot of internal stakeholders. So everybody up the power structure is a stakeholder, and you have to make sure they know what your successes are. So as we think about, for example, getting access to the kinds of philanthropists who show up at the Aspen Institute, a department head, a department chair is unlikely to be invited to these kinds of events. A dean might be invited to these kinds of events. A president may be. A president can get on the invitation list for these things. And so you want to make sure that all the way up the food chain, you are always feeding successes. You want to be telling your administrators, hey, our department is addressing this in this way. You want to be able to convert the scholarship into things that are exciting, and a little graphic, a little tidbit that person can take when they go to these events to talk about fundraising. And you also want to be positive and engaged with all of these folks, aware of what are the problems that administrators are struggling to solve, so that when you come to them with what you think are your problems, you know ahead of time if that problem is going to be virtually impossible to solve or something that's just really easy, an easy win for them. So this kind of engagement is very important for relationship. This kind of relationship building is very important. And then external stakeholders are alumni, your Fort Collins community. So knowing your community, knowing how you engage with them is important. The extension community, federal funding agencies. So knowing program managers, how to connect, being aware of what requests for proposals are coming out in a timely manner and helping make sure that your faculty get those. And then foundations and philanthropies are also your stakeholders. And you want to be sure you're aware of what their interests and needs are. So where I am right now, the philanthropies are oil company retirees who are ready to think about investing in climate solutions, and they need language that doesn't make oil companies look bad because that was their past, but they want solutions that looking forward. And so understanding what's motivating them and helping them think through how to give you that money is important. So you want to institutionalize your stakeholder relationships. So one person by themselves going out and building stakeholder relationships is great, but if you lose that person, it's all gone. So you want to institutionalize your stakeholder relationships, and you do that through contracts. If you're working with businesses, or that's primarily in businesses, you want to have strong business contracts. So you need to understand the process of technology transfer and property rights at your institution, so that you can become an honest broker with colleagues and businesses, so that you become a trustworthy partner. Your institution becomes a trustworthy partner. And then you want to be sure that you are not always putting the same person in front of your business collaborators. You want them to perceive not this is one faculty member's show. You want it to be the CSU show, so that they associate success with CSU, not with that one person who might be hired away. And this is quite general, but this type of language or vision is broadly applicable everywhere. So you want your stakeholders to be genuine partners in your problem solving. You don't want to go in to a stakeholder relationship thinking that you know the answer, because nobody wants to have somebody else tell them what they should be doing. You want to go and listen and understand what their challenges are, and knit your skills together with their challenges. And that requires long-term ongoing relationships and relationship management. And you want to be equitable and transparent. So no buddy hires, no secret cash outlays to best friend from grad school. You use money in a way that's transparent and accountable, and so that people trust you. They know that if they give you money, it's going to go somewhere good. that's important throughout the internal and external stakeholder relationship. You want to be an honest, trustworthy listener who accomplishes tasks as described. No surprises, no unexpected diversions of funds. And then in terms of promoting and supporting research was another item that y'all asked me to talk about. So faculty need time. Doing research means faculty need time. They need other stuff too, but faculty need time. Time is the most valuable component of a faculty member's workload. And so that means you want to manage very carefully what you ask them to do. You don't want to, there's lots of wonderful things that we could all be doing to grow our programs, our departments. And you want to think very carefully what you ask of your colleagues, because there's going to be a trade-off, and that trade-off can be their scholarship, and that's not what you want. So it's very important to have strong pre-award support and then strong post-award support. And I think this is something that I'm eager to hear faculty experience with this. I'm super interested to hear if you're getting the kinds of staff support you need for finding proposals, and then if you're getting the kinds of creative matchmaking at the administrative level. Hey, have you seen this? Because I know this program manager expressed interest in this. So very important. And finally, this is my last slide, y'all. Getting great ideas to businesses means thinking about a culture of entrepreneurship at the department, school, and university level. And frankly, if somebody had asked me what department has a good history of that, I would have said this one. So I'm eager to learn from what has worked well here for that kind of thing. Okay, I'm going to stop because it's 10:46.
So we can open it up for questions for a few minutes. I believe there is a class after this. We'll also have an open forum. It'll be over in the Harris Wood boardroom over at the second floor of Animal Sciences, immediately following this, so from 11 to 12. But we'll open it up for questions for the next few minutes. Did you raise your hand?
I can go.
Oh, I thought you saw it go up.
I was going to save this for the forum, but I think it'll be all the same, most of the same folks anyways. So the idea of institutionalizing faculty relationships with external stakeholders was really interesting to me, because I don't feel like I've ever heard anybody say that before. So that, and it seems like a really good idea. And I was imagining it as a faculty member, and I was thinking, well, why don't we do that? Well, you know, those relationships are very carefully cultivated, and it's like, who do I trust to be coming in? And maybe that's why, I don't know, nobody's ever asked me to do that. Just curious if you could talk more about how do you imagine that would work with these carefully built relationships. How would a department head come in and build that institutionalization?
So I can give you two really different examples of that. One example would be a pretty natural mentorship relationship. So many universities have faculty, senior faculty, junior faculty, either formal or informal mentoring relationships, and you might think it was in the best interest of your mentee to begin to learn how to access these kinds of external networks, and so that would be one way to do that. Another example that's totally different would be the university foundation relations program. So you would want to communicate with your foundation relations people that it's important to you that when one person is funded by a foundation, that you use that connection to get lots of other people in front of that foundation. So for example, that's something that my university did not encourage when I had an award from the Moore Foundation, which is too bad because there are actually a bunch of people in my school who would benefit from and are well connected to the